Emily Mason slammed the cash register drawer shut as the customer in front of her stormed off, muttering about lousy service. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as the line snaked further out the door. It was Black Friday at Garland's Emporium, and the store was a frenzy of flashing lights, blaring holiday music, and stress shoppers. Emily's manager barked orders into her earpiece, her voice grating like nails on a chalkboard that I end the chaos. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She dared a glance when her shift ended, her heart sinking at the notification. Credit card minimum payment due, $752.56. She'd been dodging collection calls for weeks, but time was running out. Failure to pay meant more fees, maybe even legal action. A wave of dread washed over her. How could she climb out of this hole when she barely made enough to cover rent? Her shift ended, but the panic stayed, walking home through Chicago's icy streets. Emily passed a pop-up Christmas market. The air smelled of cinnamon and pine, and colorful stalls glittered under string lights. Her steps slowed when she noticed a booth selling handmade ornaments, delicate glass globes painted with wintry scenes. The vendor handed over a receipt with a smile, the kind of joy Emily hadn't felt in months that an idea sparked. Back at her tiny apartment, Emily dug through her closet, pulling out boxes of old art supplies from her college days. Brushes, paints, and clay. Her hands trembled as she sketched a snowman design. Could she turn this into money? It wasn't much, but it was something. A plan began to form, a last-ditch effort to escape her mounting debt. The next evening, Emily had crafted her first ornament, a charming, hand-painted snowman wearing a red scarf. She posted a picture of it online, setting the price at $20. "Let's see if anyone bites," she murmured, her heart pounding. An hour later, a notification lit up her phone. One new sale. The excitement quickly turned to terror. What if the buyer hated it? Her confidence faltered as she carefully packed the ornament, wrapping it in tissue paper and bubble wrap. She nearly missed the post office deadline, but managed to send it off with seconds to spare. As she trudged home, the weight of her debt still loomed, but for the first time in months, hope flickered. One ornament sold wasn't enough, but it was a start, and she was determined to turn that spark into a roaring fire. The next day, Emily woke up to 3 more orders in her online shop. Elation surged through her, but it was quickly tempered by a sobering realization. She had just enough materials left for one ornament. Her old art supplies were dwindling, and payday was still days away. She stared at her laptop, her cursor hovering over a Buy Now button for more paint, brushes, and blank ornaments. The total was $92.54. Money she didn't have. Biting her lip, Emily decided to take a gamble. She used her nearly maxed-out credit card, praying the investment would pay off. As the materials arrived the next evening, she worked tirelessly, painting and drying ornaments in shifts. Each brushstroke carried a mix of anxiety and determination. By midnight, she had crafted 6 new designs. She snapped photos and uploaded them to her shop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before hitting publish. It was sink or swim now. Within 24 hours, Emily's shop was flooded with orders. Strangers left comments praising her craftsmanship and unique designs. A particularly intricate ornament featuring a snowy Chicago skyline was the biggest hit. She barely had time to celebrate before the stress of fulfilling the orders set in. Emily turned her tiny apartment into a chaotic workshop. The kitchen table was covered in paint brushes and half-finished ornaments, while her bed served as a drying station. Sleep became a distant memory as she pulled all-nighters, racing to meet the demand. But for every success, new challenges arose. A customer complained about a late delivery, and another wanted a custom design she wasn't sure she could create. Doubt clawed at her, but she refused to give up. Late one night, Emily received a message from a local influencer who stumbled upon her shop. They wanted to feature her ornaments in their holiday gift guide. The catch? She'd need to provide 5 free samples by the end of the week. Emily weighed the pros and cons. It was a risk, but the exposure could catapult her little side hustle into something bigger. She agreed, spending hours perfecting the samples, even neglecting her regular orders to meet the influencer's deadline days later. Her phone buzzed nonstop. The influencer's post went live, and Emily's shop exploded with traffic. Orders poured in faster than she could keep up. As her sales climbed, so did her hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could pay off her debt before the holidays ended. Emily's apartment had become a battlefield of glitter, paint, and discarded packaging. Every surface was covered with projects in various stages of completion. Her hands ached from endless painting, and her eyes burned from the strain of late nights. The flood of orders from the influencer's post had pushed her beyond exhaustion, but the numbers didn't lie. She was finally making real progress. Her online shop had pulled in $1,200 in just 5 days for the first time in years. Her credit card balance was starting to shrink. Still, the pressure mounted. Customers wanted expedited shipping, more custom designs, and even gift wrapping. Emily felt like she was balancing on a tightrope, one slip away from disaster. When she accidentally dropped a half-finished ornament, watching it shatter on the floor, she sank to her knees. Tears welled up, but she wiped them away. "No time for this," she whispered. "Keep going." Just as Emily felt she was finding her rhythm, disaster struck. One of her biggest shipments, 20 ornaments for a corporate client, was returned due to damaged goods. The email from the client was curt and unforgiving. Demanding a refund, Emily stared at the message, her stomach churning. A refund would erase most of her week's earnings, and she couldn't afford to replace the broken items. Desperation set in as she emailed the client, offering to redo the order at no additional cost if they gave her another chance. The next few days were a blur of frantic work. She bought sturdier packaging, even though it ate into her profits, and remade the entire batch. When the ornaments finally arrived undamaged, the client sent a brief thank you. Relief flooded her, but the scare left her rattled. One evening, Emily's neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, knocked on her door. The elderly woman had noticed Emily's lights on late at night and wanted to check in. When Emily hesitantly explained her ornament business, Mrs. Thompson's eyes lit up. "I used to run a craft business back in the day," she said. "If you ever need an extra set of hands, let me know." At first, Emily hesitated. She wasn't sure if she could afford help, even from a well-meaning neighbor. But as the holiday rush intensified, she swallowed her pride and accepted the offer. Mrs. Thompson proved to be a lifesaver, helping with packaging and even brainstorming new designs. With her new ally by her side, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't alone in this hustle anymore, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe she might actually pull it off. That Emily's sales skyrocketed as the holidays drew closer, but the pressure was relentless. She worked into the early hours of the morning, fueled by caffeine and sheer determination. On a frigid Monday afternoon, she rushed to the post office with a box containing 15 custom orders. She handed it over, relieved to meet the deadline. 2 days later, disaster struck. A frantic email from a customer read, "Where's my order?" The tracking shows it never left the post office. Emily checked the tracking number. Her worst fear was confirmed. The shipment had been stolen before it even left the facility. Her pulse raced as she contacted the post office, but they were no help. "Once it's scanned, it's out of our hands," the clerk said flatly. Emily wanted to scream. Those lost ornaments represented days of work and hundreds of dollars. She had no choice but to remake every single order. The thought of telling her customers the truth left her paralyzed, but she knew delays could ruin her reputation. Determined to recover, Emily pushed herself harder than ever. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. Orders kept pouring in, including a high-stakes request from a luxury boutique downtown. They wanted 50 ornaments for an exclusive holiday event. Due in 4 days, Emily hesitated. Fulfilling the order would mean neglecting smaller customers and risking burnout. But the boutique's payment could wipe out her remaining debt. After a long internal battle, she accepted the challenge. For 4 days, she worked non-stop, her fingers cramping from hours of delicate painting. Mrs. Thompson helped as much as she could, but the pressure was suffocating. Emily couldn't afford even one mistake. On the final night, she collapsed into bed, her alarm set to ensure she made the boutique's deadline. The next morning, Emily arrived at the boutique, her heart pounding as she handed over the ornaments. The store owner inspected them with a sharp eye, each second stretching into eternity. Finally, they smiled. "These are perfect. We'll take them." Relief washed over Emily as she pocketed the check, the largest she'd ever received. Her victory was short-lived. That evening, she received an email from another customer, furious about a delayed order. Emily had been so consumed with the boutique project that she'd overlooked smaller orders. One angry comment turned into several as customers took to social media, accusing her of neglecting them. Her chest tightened as she scrolled through the complaints. She had gained so much momentum, but one misstep threatened to undo everything. The stakes had never been higher. Could she salvage her reputation, or was this the beginning of the end? Emily's heart pounded as she read the scathing comments piling up online. "Terrible service," one post read. "Don't trust the shop if you're looking for timely delivery." The influencer who had initially boosted her sales subtly distanced themselves, removing her from their gift guide. Desperation clawed at her. Emily fired off heartfelt apologies to every upset customer, offering refunds or free ornaments. Each email felt like an admission of failure, but she couldn't let her business collapse under the weight of bad press. By midnight, she had managed to calm some customers, but the damage to her reputation lingered. Sales slowed to a trickle. Exhausted, Emily stared at her dwindling bank balance. She had made progress on her debt, but the slowdown meant she might not hit her goal before the holiday season ended. The following morning, Emily received a text from an old co-worker, Megan, who had heard about her ornament business. Megan had a proposal. "I can get you a spot at the big Christmas gala downtown. High rollers attend. It's risky, but you could sell out in one night." Emily's pulse quickened. The gala was a golden opportunity, but the vendor fee was steep. $500 up front, non-refundable. She didn't have the cash, and using her credit card felt like gambling with fire. Yet, the promise of a packed room full of wealthy shoppers was too tempting to ignore against her better judgment. Emily took the plunge. She threw every ounce of energy into creating high-end designs that would dazzle at the gala, even pawning a beloved family heirloom to cover additional supplies. Her hands shook with fatigue, but she told herself it would be worth it the night of the gala. Emily arrived at the lavish venue, her table adorned with her finest creations. The room buzzed with holiday cheer and the clinking of champagne glasses. But as the evening progressed, doubt began to creep in. Shoppers admired her work, but only a handful made purchases. Panic bubbled beneath her composed exterior. She needed to sell at least half her inventory to break even. Then, as the crowd thinned, a man in a tailored suit approached. He examined one of her most expensive ornaments, a custom hand-painted snow globe, and asked, "Can you create a series of these for my hotel chain? I'll need 100 by next week." Emily's breath caught. The offer was massive, but the timeline was impossible. She hesitated, weighing the risk. Finally, she nodded, sealing the deal with a handshake. As he walked away, she realized she had just made a commitment that could either save her business or destroy her completely. Emily returned home from the gala with a mixture of triumph and dread. The hotel chain order was a massive opportunity, $5,000 if she delivered on time. But the logistics felt insurmountable. She had only 7 days to produce 100 hand-painted snow globes. Her tiny apartment couldn't handle the workload, so Emily rented a small workspace with her credit card, hoping the risk would pay off. She enlisted Mrs. Thompson, who quickly roped in her 2 retired friends to help with packaging and base painting. They worked in assembly line fashion, but Emily alone could handle the intricate designs. To be why the third day, exhaustion overtook her. Her hands cramped so badly, she couldn't hold a brush, forcing her to ice them every hour. When a shipment of blank globes arrived damaged, she nearly screamed in frustration. Every second felt like a ticking bomb, counting down to a potential disaster. Halfway through the week, Emily received an unexpected call from Megan, her former co-worker who had gotten her into the gala. Megan had a suggestion. "I know someone who can duplicate your designs with a machine. You'll lose some of the handmade charm, but it's fast and cheaper. Want me to connect you?" Emily's stomach churned. Outsourcing went against everything her brand stood for. But the deadline loomed over her like a storm cloud. After a sleepless night of deliberation, she reluctantly agreed to meet Megan's contact. The man operated out of a dingy warehouse. He promised quick results but demanded half the payment up front. Emily hesitated, but desperation won out. She handed over $1,500 of her hard-earned profits, praying it wasn't a mistake. That on the final day before the deadline, Emily received the shipment from the warehouse. Her heart sank as she opened the first box. The ornaments were poorly painted, with smudged details and uneven finishes. They looked nothing like her original work. She called Megan's contact, her voice shaking with rage. "This is unacceptable. These aren't what I ordered." The man's response was cold. "You get what you pay for. No refunds." Emily felt the walls closing in. She couldn't deliver these subpar ornaments to the hotel chain, but there wasn't enough time to fix them. She spent the rest of the night desperately trying to salvage the designs, repainting and retouching as many as she could. When she finally packed the boxes for delivery, she knew they weren't perfect. All she could do was hope the hotel chain would see the effort behind them, and not the imperfections. Emily hand-delivered the boxes to the hotel chain's corporate office, her stomach twisting with anxiety. The hotel manager, a polished woman with a clipboard and a scrutinizing gaze, inspected the ornaments one by one. "These are acceptable," she finally said, her tone cold and clipped. "But this isn't the quality I was expecting from your portfolio." Emily's heart sank. Acceptable wasn't good enough. The manager handed her a check for half the promised amount, stating they would reassess future collaborations. As Emily walked out of the building, the weight of her failure bore down on her. Half the payment barely covered her expenses, leaving her deeper in debt. She wanted to cry, but instead forced herself to focus on the next step. There was no time to wallow. She needed a way out of this financial mess. Back in her apartment, Emily sifted through the wreckage of her holiday hustle. Bills piled up on her desk, and her hands still bore paint stains from her frantic efforts. She scrolled through her shop's page, noticing fewer orders and lukewarm reviews. But amidst the chaos, one email caught her attention. It was from a local news station looking to feature small businesses for a holiday spotlight. They had seen her work at the gala and wanted to interview her for a segment airing that weekend. Emily hesitated. After everything that had gone wrong, she wasn't sure if she could put herself out there. But Mrs. Thompson urged her to seize the opportunity. "This could be your comeback, Emily. Don't let one setback define you." With a mix of fear and determination, Emily agreed to the interview, knowing this might be her last chance to salvage her dream. But on the day of the interview, Emily arrived at the studio, her nerves threatening to consume her. The bright lights and bustling crew amplified her anxiety, but she reminded herself why she had started this journey. To prove she could create something meaningful out of nothing. The host greeted her warmly and guided her through the questions. Emily spoke about her passion for handmade crafts, the challenges she'd faced, and the lessons she'd learned. She even brought a few of her best ornaments, which the camera zoomed in on for a close dash-up by the time the segment aired. Emily's shop was flooded with new traffic, comments poured in from viewers praising her resilience and creativity. Sales spiked overnight, reigniting her hope, but as the orders rolled in, Emily realized she had reached a crossroads. She could continue as she had, risking burnout, or she could find a sustainable way forward. The decision loomed, and the stakes had never been higher. The surge in orders after the news segment left Emily overwhelmed but exhilarated. Her story had struck a chord with people, and her inbox was flooded with messages of encouragement and demands for custom ornaments. Emily knew she couldn't repeat her past mistakes. She called a meeting with Mrs. Thompson and her friends to brainstorm solutions. Together, they devised a plan, streamlined production without compromising quality. Emily would focus on her signature designs, limiting custom orders to manageable numbers. While her team handled packaging and prep, she also set up a pre-order system, giving herself breathing room for deadlines. Customers loved the transparency and the promise of handcrafted items. Even if they had to wait longer for the first time, Emily felt like she was running her business, not the other way around. Christmas approached, the pressure didn't ease. Emily's pre-order system worked well, but a massive snowstorm disrupted shipping across the region, delaying deliveries. Customers began emailing her in a panic, worried their gifts wouldn't arrive in time. Emily worked around the clock, personally driving to nearby towns to ensure orders made it to local customers for those farther away. She sent apology emails with discount codes for future purchases. IT was a grueling effort, but her authenticity won. Customers over many even posted glowing reviews about her dedication. Still, the physical and emotional toll of the season left Emily questioning whether she could ever do this again. On Christmas Eve, Emily sat alone in her apartment, the first moment of peace she'd had in weeks. She logged into her bank account, holding her breath. After paying off her final credit card bill, she stared at the zero balance, tears streaming down her face. IT wasn't just about the money. Emily had proven to herself that she could overcome every obstacle thrown her way. She thought back to the sleepless nights, the broken ornaments, and the near collapse of her dream. Somehow, she had come out stronger. As she sipped her hot cocoa, she realized the journey had taught her something invaluable: resilience. She had built more than a business. She had built a life she could be proud of. On New Year's Day, Emily officially launched a revamped version of her business. She had a clear vision: seasonal collections, limited run designs, and a small team to help her scale responsibly. The holiday hustle had been brutal, but it had also revealed Emily's strength and creativity. Customers continued to support her, drawn by her authenticity and the care she put into every ornament. As she stood in her new, fully equipped workspace, Emily smiled. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready this time. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving.